So this is day 8. This is ready for the first turn. And we finished off the pile last time. Gave it a good heavy watering, and then we measure the temperature every day, and the temperature gauge gives us an idea. It confirms whether we've got a good pile. Compost needs to go up to between 55 and 65 degrees centigrade. This is the ideal temperature where beneficial microbes thrive. If it gets any hotter than 65 degrees, it will kill beneficial microbes and can turn anaerobic, which will then be a very poor quality compost. If the compost doesn't reach 55 degrees, it won't kill any pathogens, any bad microorganisms, and also it won't denature any weed seeds. Not that that's a huge problem for compost tea, but so this is the compost thermometer which we're using. So it's a very high quality thermometer. So take it out, and every day just insert it right into the. So you have a look there. So you start off at about 20 degrees. You can see it'll get up to about 57 today. Day 1, when we first built it, it was 25 degrees. The next day was 38 degrees. The next day 47 degrees. And by day 3 or day 4 it was already up to 55. Day 5 it got up to 65 degrees, and then it will gradually taper off down a couple of degrees each day to day 8. And that's because the oxygen levels inside the pile are starting to reduce, so the microbial activity will start to reduce as the oxygen reduces. This is why we turn it every 8 days. So it's fairly stable there. What's that? 54 degrees. So that's good. It's started to cool down a bit. That's why we're ready to turn it today on day 8. So this is the daily maintenance for this pile. You have to treat this compost pile like you're treating a farm animal or a living organism, because it's mostly living organisms. They need water. We've given them plenty of food. So I always put the thermometer in, and then you spend 2 minutes. You walk around the outside of the pile, giving it water. The reason being, you water the outside of the pile, not so much the top. The outside of the pile is because what will happen is it's like a vortex. The main activity, microbial activity, is in the center of the pile, and it'll be sucking air in through the outside of the pile and out through the top like a bit of a circle, like a torus type thing. And of course, particularly in summer, of course, the air coming in is extremely dry, so you've got to moisten the outside. You don't want it too wet. About 2 minutes. So I'll just give you a brief demonstration because we've already done it this morning. And so on around the entire pile. Now I'll just explain the tarpaulin on top. Pretty tatty old tarp, but anyway, the function is when you first built it, up to the first turn, maybe up to the second, but usually it only takes up to the first turn. It helps retain some of the moisture, because obviously you remember from when we were building the pile, the ingredients were very dry, so it just keeps a bit more of the moisture in. We shouldn't need it after this. Need the tarpaulin after this, so it's just strapped on to stop it from blowing away. So that's the daily maintenance. Check the temperature, write it down, definitely write it down, and then 2 minutes walking around the pile, watering the outside, and that's it. Okay, so we've moved the net, the cage over to the side here. We are just about to start the turn. Now the thing to remember with each turn, and this is why one of the reasons it can only be handmade, not machine made, is that the outside needs to go to the inside. So when we turn it, we'll start off with the top layer, and then we'll work around the outside of the pile, putting that into the net first, rather than just working from one end and working our way through. So the outside wants to go to the inside. So just to demonstrate. And there's a lot of mixing involved as well, which can only be done by hand with a pitchfork. You can't do it with a bobcat or any other sort of machine, because there isn't that level of mixing involved. So you can see we've taken off the dry top layer and part of the outer layer, and when you look in closely here, you can see how this is a bit of lupin straw. You can see there's a lot of white bacteria on here. It's the thermophilic bacteria. It likes heat. Now this already here is uncomfortable to touch. It's quite hot. It's 55-60 degrees. So you can see already that the insides of the straw, it's starting to develop a very sort of rank. It's quite moist. It's not too wet, so you'll know if it's too wet because you'll pick up a handful of it and you'll squeeze it and lots of water will come out. This is about the right moisture content, because if I squeeze it really hard, it's just thinking about a single drop coming out of water. Any more than that and it's too wet. So there's not really any troubleshooting in this pile because it's performing beautifully. It's got a good mix of ingredients, got good temperature, and it's working. If it was too hot, we might have to turn it a bit earlier. If it was too hot, it could be that we've got too much nitrogen. We might need to add a bit more straw. If it's not heating up, we might need to add a bit more manure, or it could be moisture. The most common problem with piles not heating up is moisture. So, but this one's been kept optimal moisture, so it's been doing well. So you can see here, this is from sort of getting in towards, just inside of the pile. This is obviously oat hay. Now you can, I don't know if you can see in the video, but see all the fine white threads. That's all the mycelium of some sort of beneficial fungi, and it's eating the cellulose inside which is the sugar, inside the cell walls of the hay, and digesting it, turning it into soil. You can see how it's a bit darker here with a bit more heat and moisture. So what this will look like, probably even by the next turn we'll see, but I do think this will be almost all this sort of darker colour, and even breaking down a lot more. You start to lose the shape of the straw. You can still see the definite shape of the straw, but even by the next turn, by the third turn at the latest, all this will be just turning into rich soil. So you can really see that, how that sort of holds together. It's just all incredible. And the liquid fish really promotes fungal growth. That's why liquid fish has a very important role to play in this, which we've right. So we've taken off all of the outside material and most of the top material from the pile, and it's now in the ring. Now what we're left here, this is the core of the pile. It's sort of a dome sort of shape. This is really, really hot. This is very unpleasant to touch, even just on the outside, let alone burying my hand in. If this was in winter when it's cold, we just have clouds of steam. It's 35 degrees today, so you can't see anything. So something we haven't shown in the video as well is that as one of us is turning the pile, the other is actually watering it. And that's especially important in the middle of summer for the first turn, because as I mentioned, when we built the pile, it was quite dry. So you'll be putting a lot less water on for the second turn. But this is where all the action happens in the middle here, which is why we take the outside and put it in the middle. So that's why you turn it several times over 8 weeks. So all the material in the pile spends at least a week or two in this hot zone, this middle sort of section where it's really cooking away. So you can still see at this stage, you can still see the individual. It's hot. You can still see it's it's quite wet and draggled and that. There's plenty of microbial activity. It's a little on the dry side, which is why we're wetting it. It's so hot. But on the first turn, you can still make out individual wood chips. You can still make out straw, clumps of manure, etc. When we do the second turn, it'll start to be very hard to recognise the straw and the manure and that. The wood chips, don't really get digested till right towards the very end because there's a lot of material in there, and there's a lot of work to break that down. But anyway.